It's time to thank some more of our generous global sponsors, namely JRA, Craftwork Living Technologies, MAD Systems, Mediamation, Mousetrap, Oceaneering, PCL Construction, Sally Corporation, Stantec, Thinkwell Group, Wärtsilä Funa International. Give them all a big hand, please. Our industry is full of amazing people, artists of every kind, whether it be designers, actors, engineers, business people. Everybody weaves a creative web throughout the entertainment industry. There's no better person to present a new honor from the TEA than its founder, Monty Lundy.
Well, thank you, JP, for that kind introduction. Can everybody hear me? Great. And thank you, SeaWorld, for supporting the TEA and for hosting this fabulous SATE conference. I also want to give a huge shout out to the TEA past presidents for developing the TEA Masters Program and to the International Board for supporting its launch today. I'm incredibly honored to be here to help initiate this new awards program for the association. The TEA Masters Program is intended to be an annual celebration separate from the THEA Awards, with the specific purpose of recognizing a larger number of working industry professionals. These highly motivated individuals have spent decades mastering their craft through innovation, artistry, and craftsmanship, all while making significant contributions to the growth of the themed entertainment industry. In short, TEA Masters are the unsung heroes who get the hard work done and have a profound impact on guest experiences around the world. This year, the Past President's Committee, aka the Selection Committee, received 58 nominations for TEA Master consideration. All were incredible candidates, and those not selected this year will automatically be considered next year along with any new nominees. Many nominators wrote eloquently about these professionals being mentors, industry leaders, and masters of their specific discipline. And I have to say, as a committee member, it was quite touching to see how people wrote about their peers in the industry. Now, not to make the TEA Masters feel old, I prefer to think of them as well-seasoned, but collectively, they represent 288 years of industry experience. Now, to put that into perspective, that's 46 years longer than the United States has been a country. So think about that. Now, as you meet these professionals, you'll see that they're wearing special lapel pins. These are notable in that they signify their perpetual status as TEA members. And for the next gen members in the audience, I encourage you to ask them questions, lots. And for the rest of you, please give them your warm congratulations as we begin a new tradition of celebrating our exceptional peers. They're a link to our past, and they will teach those who will lead us into the future. So with that, I'd like to ask the president of the TEA, David Wilrich, to come up and help me. David? So, in continuing the TEA tradition of giving out massively heavy awards, David is going to hand out massively heavy plaques, which commemorate the unique status in our industry of each of our TEA Masters. So we're going to start with Nina Vaughn, illustrator and art director. Nina has been creating visualizations of environments, shows, and attractions for theme parks, museums, and hospitality venues for 37 years. For over 20 years, Nina worked as an illustrator doing blue sky concept art and art direction for Disney attractions including Indiana Jones Adventure, Disney Quest, Pooh's Honey Hunt, and Tokyo Disneyland. She has also illustrated show and themed land concepts for numerous Disney parks around the world. Nina has spent the last 5 years working as an art director at the Hedema Group. As I said, they're massively heavy plaques. Next, Ralph Nielsen, master craftsman and project producer. With 55 years of industry experience, Ralph is nothing short of a themed entertainment renaissance man. He's a creative problem solver, a versatile hands-on, all mediums craftsman and artisan, and an extraordinary manager and leader of project teams. Ralph has produced iconic elements for theme parks, motion pictures, museums, resorts, and numerous attractions at various Disney parks, Universal Studios, Dollywood, and the Smithsonian. Ralph is currently producing video documentaries in Japan. Ralph. Next up, Philipp von Stratum, CEO and creative director. Philipp started as a model maker and spent 29 years working passionately in the themed entertainment industry. For the last 25 years, he has been the CEO and creative director of P&P Projects, a company he founded in the Netherlands. With over 60 employees, his company specializes in the design and fabrication of exhibits, show systems, and floats for major theme parks across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. Their clients include Disneyland Paris, Efteling, Madame Tussauds, Europa Park, Legoland, Lotte World, and Dubai Parks and Resorts, as well as major European planetariums, museums, and brand centers. Philipp. Next, we have Rich Proctor, writer and storyteller. For nearly 5 decades, Rich has helped conceive and produce experiences across a wide variety of projects and media. Rich's very varied career includes doing comedy with the Groundlings Improv Group, performing as a comedy radio disc jockey, entertainment reporting for the Los Angeles Television, and show writing at Walt Disney Imagineering. As a senior writer at BRC Imagination Arts for the last 15 years, Rich has used his creative energy and enthusiasm to develop shows for theme parks, world expos, museums, brand and cultural centers around the world. Rich. Next, we have Glenn Birket, ride and show control engineering. Glenn has been working in the themed entertainment industry for 43 years, starting as a ride operator at Walt Disney World. For the last 34 years, Glenn has been the CEO and lead engineer at Birket Engineering, an international company that has provided control systems for every Disney and Universal Studios park since Epcot. Birket Engineering also produces specialty products for the themed entertainment industry and was recently awarded the Supplier of the Year by the Walt Disney Parks and Resorts Company for providing show control systems to 17 attractions at Shanghai Disneyland. Glenn. And next up we have Joe Falzetta, lighting designer. With a background in theatrical design, Joe has spent 38 years as a principal lighting designer and mentor at Walt Disney Imagineering. He has developed and implemented immersive lighting experiences as either the principal or the lead lighting designer for every Disney theme park and for the Disney Cruise Line. He has worked on 8 Thea-recognized Disney attractions, including Pandora, Avatar, Epcot, Star Tours, and Tokyo Disney Seas. And in 2018, Joe joined Gallegos Lighting Design as a senior consultant. Joe. And last, but definitely not least, we have John Lindsay, project management. For 38 years, John has been an industry leader project managing themed entertainment projects around the world. He's founded 2 companies focused on project management and has written books on the subject. Starting as a shop carpenter at Disney, John rose to upper-level management during the development of 4 theme parks, including Disney Shanghai. He has also provided management expertise for 3 World Expos and the rollout of the first 21 Warner Brothers retail stores. John is currently a consultant and VP of project management at N-Fusion, formerly Nassel. John. So one more round of applause for our magnificent 7, the TEA Masters. So if you guys... I think they'll come and take them. They're very heavy. All right, for the next portion, you don't have to listen to me talk as much. We're going to be asking some questions and see what these folks have to say. So I also want to point out there's a brochure on your table there that is specifically about the TEA Masters, and I want to give Judy Rubin credit for putting that together. I know it was a labor of love for her. And I also want to mention that myself included, most of us started our careers back in the Epcot days, and we worked there for a few years, and several of us, well, several stayed and several left. And what we have represented here are a lot of different career paths. There are obviously different disciplines represented, but also very different career paths. We have Joe, who grew roots and stayed there forever. And then we have John, Rich, and Nina, who typically work for major design development companies. And then we have Ralph, who does contracting for projects all over the world for different markets and different venues. And then finally, we have Glenn and Philip, who actually started their own companies. So they represent kind of the entrepreneurial contingent. So as you listen to their answers, I think you'll see that there's a different flavor that comes from each, but they've all found success in our industry. So with that, the first question I have is just a hand raise from all of you. It's very simple. When you were young, did you plan to work in themed entertainment? Any of you?
No.
Crickets, that's what I expected. So the point being is that most of us didn't seek out this industry. We fell into it, and we all have our unique stories about how we got into the industry and why we did it and all of that. So my first set of questions really kind of addresses that subject. So Philip, you were not as directly influenced by Disney when you were starting out. How did your childhood interest in space lead you to working in this industry?
Well, when I was young, it was in the Apollo era. I was about 6 when the moon landings happened. That kind of stuck to me. Later on in the years, I started making scale models just for a hobby's sake. And from that, that hobby grew a little bit out of hand. And so I did a few planetariums and a few space shows. And suddenly I got an endorsement from NASA going to do a Tivoli Gardens Space Festival. And the next big thing that happened was that Disney Paris called me for the opening of Space Mountain to do a complete Apollo era space replications of full-scale models for them. So that was a good start.
Excellent. And John, down on the end there, how and why did you start your career in themed entertainment?
Well, I answered an ad in a paper. I needed a job. It was that simple. So I was originally trained in theater. I had to go to do New York or Los Angeles, so I decided to go to Los Angeles. I arrived in the spring of 1980 when all of the film industry decided to go on strike. So I did odd jobs to feed myself, and there was an ad in the paper from Disney looking for carpenters to build scenery for Epcot, and that's where I met Joe, of course, building scenery for Spaceship Earth, and that's where I started.
Excellent. Ralph, while in school you studied archaeology, anthropology, taxidermy, oil painting, AV engineering, and oceanography, to name a few subjects. Did any of that lead you to starting your career in themed entertainment, or were there other influences in your life?
Actually, I just had a pleasant accident. I used all those educational things as tools, but I did not dream of working in that business. A friend of mine just called me one day and said, "We're working on something up in Orlando. Can you come visit me on Saturday?" So I went there, had lunch, and before I left at lunch, a fella came over and said, "Can you start Monday morning?" And I'm like, "What? I came to have lunch with a friend, you know."
Excellent. So now, Glenn, I'm interested in your answer because you started in the industry as captain of the Nautilus submarine at Walt Disney World, and then got recruited by WED Enterprises as an electrical engineer to work on Epcot. I want to know, why on earth did you give up a dream job of being captain of a make-believe submarine and start at WET?
That's right. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. It was a great job. It was a lot of fun. I guess it was the responsible thing to do to become an engineer. I was a student at the time at UCF. Back then it went by another name, FTU. So I was working weekends and summers and did the responsible thing and interviewed for places like Martin Marietta and Bell Telephone back at the time it was. And one day I came to work and there was a little note clipped on my time card and it said, go upstairs and pick up your tickets to go to Los Angeles to interview at WED. It's because one of my supervisors had taken a coordinator job out there, Jane Jackson, so you may know her. And so she got me the interview and I went out. They made an offer and I took it. It sounded like it was the lowest dollar offer of all of them, but it was the most interesting. It looked like it would be a heck of a lot more fun than building bombs or fixing telephones.
Excellent. Rich, you're one of a couple TEA masters that did not start your career in themed entertainment. What brought you to the dark side?
Well, no, the difference between fiction and nonfiction is that fiction has to make sense. My story is so full of coincidences and weird plot twists that it's like if you put it in a novel, you just wouldn't buy it. So the year is 1987. I'm working as a creative director for a niche advertising company that does comedy radio spots. I'm doing pretty well, but completely bored. Trying to get into the movie business, having no success whatsoever. A friend of mine is throwing a networking event. Every Friday at 4 p.m., there's a dive bar in Santa Monica Boulevard called the Rain Check Room. So I'm there as usual. Have a beer, I'm talking loudly, I'm waving my arms. And I get a tap on the shoulder. I turn around, there's a woman I've never seen before, and she says to me, you know, I don't know you, we've never met, but I know your voice. Why would I know your voice? I think to myself, okay, well, did you ever live in Santa Barbara? Did you grow up in Santa Barbara? Ever listen to KTYD, the Mighty Fine 99? Morning team of Procter & Ward? And she says, you're Rich Proctor? You're Rich Proctor of Procter & Ward? She was a high school student in Santa Barbara. And then she says, you know, this is crazy and wacky, and I know you won't be interested, but my husband is named Joe Rohde. And he's working on this project, and they're having a terrible time trying to find somebody who has the skill set to, you know, it's the first time they've ever done something. They want to create characters, but they don't want to create sketches. They want to create templates of improv action. So we need somebody that does comedy. We need somebody that's done improv. We can't find this person. And would you be interested in like having, you know, just talking to him? Now, the 5-year-old inside of me that went to Disneyland in 1956 is jumping up and down, screaming, and so I contain myself and I say, yeah, I'd be willing to talk to him. Sure, yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
And, that was the first domino that led me here.
Excellent. So, Nina, you went from studying at Art Center to going to the special effects department at Disney. How did that occur?
Well, I actually I finished Art Center, looked through the newspaper because that's where we looked for jobs back then. There was no internet, so I couldn't find anything. I did a painting for a friend, and they said, hey, a friend of mine wants to see your portfolio. They liked your painting. I brought it in. I thought, I shuffled it wherever. Anybody that would look at my portfolio, I drag it up there. And he says, you should be working. He says, a friend of mine's doing this movie called Tron at the Walt Disney Studios, and they need somebody that can fix the perspective for the backgrounds. And he says, you got a lot of perspective in your portfolio. Would you like to do that? And I go, well, yeah. I wouldn't want to work at Disney. And so after Disney, or after Tron, I thought, wow, what can I do now? What is there here for me? And the producer of the show, Harrison Ellenshaw, Peter Ellenshaw's son, said, why don't you go over to WED? And I go, well, that's architects and engineers. They build rides. And he says, well, they have artists and they have designers. And I said, well, really? Well, I got myself an interview there right away, and it was for special effects. I didn't care what department it was, and the rest is history. That's how I started. Excellent.
All right, and Joe, you've been involved in themed entertainment, and it's been a lifelong pursuit for you at Disney. What got you started there?
Well, when I was 3 years old, you want the short version. Let's skip ahead to 10th grade in high school, where I had a friend who was in the school play, and she knew I was good at carpentry. And she said, they're behind on building the set for the school play. You should go help them. My first experience with theater, and I've done it ever since. I got interested in theater. I stage managed the next play. I got into the university. I got my bachelor's degree in theater. I got my Master of Fine Arts degree in theater. Worked in theater for about 8 years before Disney at the university level as a set designer and lighting designer. And saw an ad when I was at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and went for a job interview and saw the Epcot model in the Epcot presentation area, and I knew I had to work there. I got the job as a lighting designer.
Excellent. All right, well, now you all have a little background, so we're going to get into some meatier questions here. So we're going to go back to Philip. So why did you choose to build your own company instead of working for a developer or a design group?
Well, I didn't intend at all to start a company. It kind of happened. As I told you, the hobby grew out of hand. When I was at school, I did a lot of these shows and did more of them ever. I got a lot of requests. Like I said, went to the Tivoli Gardens thing, did that big show, and suddenly I made so much money that I had to make a company out of it. Never know how to run it. Did all other kind of crazy stuff. You do things and stupid things when you're young and not hindered by any knowledge. You start building stuff. And although there was one point that I had one job interview when I think I was about 18 years old. There was one company in Holland that did little models based on space, and that was the only thing I wanted to do in the end. And they didn't want to take me on, so and that was the biggest mistake they ever made. So I became their biggest competitor. Got into the theme parks, and I changed my mind of doing space only. So I did a lot of other stuff by then, and the other company didn't. And recently they went out of business. Not recently, a couple of years ago. So.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, there
you go. All right, John. Throughout your career, you've started companies focused on project management, as well as written books on project management. You've also led TEA's. You also originally led TEA's development of the project development guidelines to help professionals standardize the way themed entertainment projects were managed and produced. What is it about project management that draws your focus?
Well, project management is really a great thing because what you get to do is you get to get a whole bunch of people with very diverse backgrounds, with very different locations all around the world, and you get to work with all those people and get them to go the same direction. And you talk about process a little bit in there when you touched on the books and things that we've done over the past. And I believe if you have process with a common understanding and a shared vision about what you're delivering, then the entire team will be aligned and will go in the same direction. And I think that alignment is much like your car, right? Imagine when your wheels are out of alignment in the front and the car shakes and shimmies and gets bad gas mileage. It's not much fun, right? But when those wheels are in alignment and that car is sailing down the road and everything's smooth, it's a great feeling. It's a wonderful feeling. And that's what it's all about, right? Is how do you get shared vision and you get all these diverse people all over the world working together as a team, go in the same direction. And it's a pretty cool thing.
All right. driving our vehicle forward. Ralph, you've built everything from giant sloths to coral reef habitats, artificial trees, rockwork, animated characters, and special effects. And this doesn't cover the movie work you've done. What is your approach when asked to create things that have never been built before?
Boy, the simple answer is my grandmother told me, try to do it. If you want to do it, do it.
Okay.
And that's the best answer I can give you.
All righty. It wasn't a trick question. All right, Glenn. You and I actually have very parallel careers. We both started at Disney. We both were asked to leave Disney after Epcot. And we both started companies in 1984. Why did you choose to start a company? And why do you provide both custom engineering services as well as products?
You're right. The work was over at Epcot, and we knew where it was all headed. I happened to have not taken any vacation because we were so busy on Epcot, so I had a bank of about 10 weeks of vacation, and there was this opportunity I had to do a little contract on the side, so I said, well, I'll take all that vacation and I'll go do this little job. Sounds like a lot of fun. It was rigging control for a television studio, actually. So I did have it in the back of my mind that I might someday start a company. That was there, but that wasn't what I was thinking then. I was thinking, I'm just going to go do this little job. But then that job led to another job, and so I brought in some people to help me do the job, and pretty soon I realized the company was starting to happen, and I realized that not much was happening at Disney at that point, so it just kind of all fell into place, and there it was.
Common theme between you and Philip. Rich, two-part question for you. What made you fall in love with this business, and what do you now love about this business?
What made me fall in love with the business? I had the best possible entry experience of this business, which is I went to Disneyland when I was 5 years old in 1956, and it was such a transformative experience for me. I remember driving in and parking in that amazing Black Lake parking lot, and there's Mickey's face and flowers, and I'm walking towards it, you know. Then I walked through that portal onto Main Street, and the thing that happened that day was that I had adventures. I went to a place where I wasn't watching television, watching Davy Crockett. I was on Dumbo's back flying. I was Mr. Toad going through the wild ride. I was on the Jungle Cruise. And I was Tom Sawyer on the island. I wasn't reading about it. I was playing hide and seek. I was in the fort. I was on the pontoon bridge. You know, I was driving on the Autopia.
And what do you love about the industry now?
What I love about the industry now is the chance to do that for other people. The ability to you know, it's the challenge of everything we do is to give guests that experience. Let them be the hero, go through an adventure, and come out feeling the way I did when I was 5, feeling ecstatic and on the top of the world, where they know something about themselves, that they have those heroic qualities. And we can do that, and it's when it works, there's nothing better in the world.
Excellent. Nina, you tend to be involved in the very inception of projects. Where does your creative inspiration come from?
Well, now I'll get on the internet. First, you're given an assignment, usually. Usually it's not a blank piece of paper. It's, we want a water park, or we want a dark ride that has dinosaurs, or whatever it is. I'll get on the internet. I'll look up every possible thing that has anything to do with that. But the funny story that I want to tell you is that in 1981, there wasn't an internet, and you spent the whole day at the library. Yeah. My library card was so dog-eared. You checked out books. You went to the bookstore. Where I can't tell you how many thousands of dollars I spent at Crown Books. But the fun part was when I got to Disney, they had an art library and a scrap file. They had the most enormous scrap file. And when you would check out a book or the scrap, you would have to sign a card. And you'd pull out the card and you'd see Sam McKim, you'd see John Hench, you'd see Herb Ryman's name on the card, and then you got to put your name underneath that.
With the masters.
And then pretty soon, and sometimes even Walt. And then next thing you know, a few years later, all the cards are missing. People started collecting them.
Original signatures. Yeah. All right, so Joe, you've spent the majority of your career at Disney. And in fact, there's no major Disney project built in the last 38 years that you haven't had some influence on. What has working at Disney taught you, and what challenges have you faced?
Well, I liked riding in John's well-aligned car. I was doing great stuff in theater, and I was happy in the theater. But when I started working at Imagineering, I could do greater things. And it all had to do with the team effort and so many disciplines contributing to the final product, and being aligned and working with the various team members. I remember an early meeting on the Land Pavilion where there was a landscape designer in the meeting, and he got very passionate at one point and said, you know, the trees are the show. The trees are the show. And I thought, what? But later I thought about it, and I went, yeah, he's right. The trees are the show. Lighting is the show, too.
Right.
And all the other disciplines is the show. And
there's the show. It's happening now.
Lighting is the show.
All right. Philip, as the only European member of this august group, do you see differences in the way projects are created and developed in Europe versus the U.S.?
Yes, the gap is closed, but in the early days, especially in Europe, we didn't have the big parks. We didn't have the Disney in Europe, so we had all family parks, and it's a way different way of working. The family parks want to make their money. They don't want to put a lot of money into drawings. They want to see the actual thing. So most of the time, we talk to these people. You put something on a napkin and started working. And they ask you when can you start on site, and that's a little bit different nowadays when you got 1,000 pages contract under your nose. So you really have to look at those things, and all the paperwork has, of course, grown massively. Also because a lot of our customers in Europe want to look at Disney and Universal, and they say, well, how do they do it there so we can copy that? So nowadays we're also in Europe are stuck with these massive amount of papers, and as a creator you want to build stuff. You don't want to put it in paperwork.
Yeah. Okay. John, you've managed some of the largest attraction-based projects on the planet. Through all that, what have you learned that makes for a great project process?
Well, it was interesting. Listening earlier today, and you all have been here for quite a while. I only had a little bit of time to stick my head in today, and I heard the gentleman talking about development and talking about making sure that everybody understands what they are starting upon. You know, what is the goals and objectives? There were discussions, and I made a few notes, actually. Let's see if everybody was paying attention. Did this ring true to people about due diligence, pro forma, right? Everybody heard that? Yes? I don't hear you. Yes? Yes, we heard that, John. Right, okay. Timing came up, programming, right? And then I heard one that was particularly interesting called schematic design gate, which I thought really caught my ear, which is really about how do you take this process and mature it in a way that you get to keep everybody, as I talked about, this alignment moving forward. And I think what's really important about process is making sure that everybody, as I said before, has a shared vision, but it's based on a foundation. And what was really interesting was to hear the gents this morning talking about that foundation from their view. And it's incumbent upon all of us when we start a project to really look at that foundation. And if you don't have a common understanding of that foundation, what happens? You get work that's out of alignment, and therefore you have to redo the work as you go forward.
So are you all starting to pick up on the different personalities up here? You can tell what part of the industry they come from. Ralph, many of the larger projects you've worked on have involved leading a team of locals, often in a foreign country. What advice do you have about leadership under those circumstances?
What's always worked for me all my life is it occurred to me that I'm working on teams, and I know beyond any reasonable doubt if I'm not there, the team is going to do something. If they're not there, I don't have a job. And I treat everybody that I work with the same way. I encourage them to think like a team worker and work as hard as they can. And remember that the key thing that we're doing of all the things besides the importance of team working is we're creating memories that last.
Excellent. All right, Glenn, your company provided show control systems for 17 attractions at Shanghai Disneyland. I didn't even know they had 17 attractions. How were you able to successfully adapt your American-based company and be so successful in China?
Well, we went over there a few years in advance. We decided to prepare ourselves because we knew that was coming. We didn't know exactly when, but we knew it was coming and that there would be more work in China. So when the Universal Studios Singapore project came along, we decided to build everything for that in Shanghai and learned a lot in the process. But the bigger question of how do you work successfully in China, it can be awfully frustrating for an American to work in China because of things that we see that don't look right to us. I think that the key thing, probably working in any foreign culture, is you need to open your mind, you need to be receptive, and you need to recognize that it's not wrong, it's different. You need to learn some of the history. It's been very, very valuable to me to learn the history of China and understand the culture, because then you start to see the reasons for why things are the way that they are around you. And then you can, it just changes your perception. And you realize that people are the same everywhere you go, and that another thing that you have to notice is that, so it seems like certain things are backwards in China. It's not where you are at any given time, it's how far you have come recently. China has come an amazing distance in the last 30 years. Got to give them credit for that. So when you realize that, you focus on that, then you're less critical of certain things that don't measure up to your own particular likes and dislikes. Excellent.
Rich, where do you draw your inspiration and creative ideas from?
The great thing about being a writer is that the world is full of creative inspiration. You know, once I discovered the true nature of storytelling, which is about human emotion, and that everybody, all the guests, want to experience something, you know, you start looking around for what stories work, what are commonalities. You can find inspiration in the newspaper about somebody who's reunited with their dog after 10 years. You know, great movies are an amazing source of inspiration. Other people's work, you know, everywhere you turn, if you look for it, if you can train yourself to see it, it's you know, it's right there in front of you. So when I go into a room at BRC, you know, it's like, what do people want? They all want common emotional things. When they go into a theme park, they want to have a memorable experience with their families that they can remember the rest of their lives. They want that day to be important. So we can create a show that reinforces that brings that up. You know, the wonderful thing is it's all around us. It's not hard to find great ideas. It's hard to winnow out the ideas to find out what the best possible idea is and then strip away everything else.
Okay. Nani, you're an amazing artist and illustrator, but you've also designed and programmed fountains, supervised the production of sets and murals, and even designed Disney theme park fun maps. What was the motivation to diversify your talents, and what have you found most challenging?
Well, it's a paycheck, and you do what you're asked to do. And
the truth finally comes out.
And if they want you to paint a mural, then you paint a mural. But the one time I was working at WET, And I was helping design the fountains, laying them out, doing the advertising illustration. And Mark Fuller said to me, well, now we're going to program the fountains. And I go, oh, okay, well, who's going to do that? And he goes, you are. And I go, me? And he goes, yeah, I'm going to send you down to school. They're going to teach you how to program, and you're going to come back and program the fountains.
There you go.
And I got to tell you, I did it. He felt that an artist, a performer, was a better person to program the fountains than a technical person, because they have rhythm. Not that I have any rhythm, but.
Craig, does Nina have rhythm? All right, good. Joe, this is a bit of a long question, I apologize. Epcot's Spaceship Earth, Space Mountain Paris, and Pandora all use lighting to amplify and enhance the architecture and outdoor environments, as opposed to interior attractions like Great Movie Ride, Star Tours, and Avatar Flight of Passage. When you start to develop a lighting design, what are the creative inspirations you tap into to achieve the desired lighting effect for the audience?
Well, I start by totally immersing myself in the story. I do as much research. I look at films if it's based on a film. I read, I look at artwork. I do what Nina did in the library. At the same time, it's it's Imagineering. It's not only the art, but it's how do you actualize. So I'm always going to the light shows. I'm going to the trade shows. I'm keeping in touch with everything that's current in the business. I know the story. Now, how do I tell the story with the technical side? And I need to merge those two things together to get to the final product.
Excellent. Philip, your company both designs and fabricates attractions and exhibits. Which is most challenging, the creation of the idea or the execution, and why?
Well, all of them are interesting. We were, like about 10 years ago, we were thinking about becoming a full design company. When I go back in time, we started out as a real small company doing crumbs that other companies left behind. And moving up that ladder, I wanted to be on the front door, to opening up for clients, so they could tell me what they want, because we got the little crumbs, and I always saw a lot of other plans that weren't feasible or didn't fit the budget and so on. So in a later stage, we started to design, doing a lot of production for other companies as well, as we still do. But the I would tell you I kind of forgot what were.
That's all right.
Were you doing on the?
Well, it's the design or the execution, which is.
Oh, design and execution. Yeah. Once I thought that we were only going to be a design company, that I thought that wasn't going to be fun. The funnest thing is that you create whatever you put on that paper or whatever in that model and blow that up in full scale, and that's really where the magic happens, to really walk in your models. I mean, that's what I was looking for. I mean, we built models and really walk around when you're creating those things, and with all the beautiful lighting and everything, and everybody done their part. That's the most wonderful thing that can happen to you, and that's what keeps us going.
Okay. John, you've led both conceptual development teams and construction teams. I'm going to ask you the same question. Which is the most challenging, the creation of the idea or the execution, and why?
One word, both. You got to have both, right? I mean, they're both really tough, right? But they're very different they're tough for very different reasons. And so if you think about it like a process, and at the start of the project, right? At the start of the project, you come up with an idea. But great teams also have people who have built it, right? Have dirt under their nails, as I say, right? Under their fingernails, right? Those people, when they participate in the front, you get that ability to execute, and we get the ability to perform. And that makes it stronger. Likewise, when you get to the end, if you don't have that vision, that person, that one eye, who saw the original seed of an idea, if they're not there at the back end, then you don't have unity and vision, right? So you need both ends to work together. And too often, I find, we separate this. We say it just like you said it, right? So there's the creation team, right? Usually what they say is there's 3 teams, right? There are the people who come up with a big idea, then there are the people who design it, and then there are the people who implement it, right? Or go and build it, right? But a great team is a team that has all those people balanced in that process and working together. And that way you really get the best out of both sides of it, right? And it makes it equally tough, I guess, the whole way through as a result.
All right, we'll go with that. Ralph, you're an amazing craftsperson and leader with a vast knowledge of subjects including chemistry, plastics, fabrication, video production, and leadership of project teams. Is there a skill you haven't learned that you would like to add to your repertoire?
Well, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. For me personally, I feel like my education is just starting. I think there's a lot of things I would really like to know how to do that I don't know how to do. And life to me is like walking down a hallway and I stop for a minute and I lean against the wall and somebody opens the door behind me and I fall in that room and it's like, wow, what can I do in here?
Excellent. Glenn, you're an entrepreneur, so let's talk about the business of the business. How has that changed over the years?
It's changed a lot. The clients are much better at articulating what they would like us to do and have a much better understanding of what it costs, and that's a big help. At the same time, the specifications have become excruciatingly detailed, you know, there's pluses and minuses. But generally the movement has been in a great direction, although then when you go to China, it's kind of like snapping back and they don't necessarily know what things cost or what's easy and what's difficult. In the purely engineering area, a lot of our focus is safety control systems, and over the years, the definition of what is safe or how safe is safe enough has evolved to where now we know. Back then, we kind of all gathered around and said, I think it's safe enough. Do you think it's safe enough?
As long as nobody's bleeding, it's good.
Yeah. And it reminds me, you know, you were mentioning that I started out driving submarines and also working the other attractions in Fantasyland back in the late 70s. I was the control system because as those vehicles were moving, or the boat, this is a 60-ton submarine, and I had the throttle, and sometimes I'd goof up and I'd ram the boat ahead and we'd come off the track and they'd slap my hand and then we'd go do it again. And now that's, you know, now I design control systems that prevent all that. That's what's changed.
I still maintain you gave up a dream job. But all right, Rich, how has doing comedy and improv help with your development of stories for experience-based attractions?
I think improv helped me in 3 ways, especially, and this goes for both the creating the stories and especially learning how to listen to clients and during that process. I'd say 3 things. Number 1, the golden rule of improv is say yes. Somebody comes into a sketch and says, I just stopped by from Mars. You can't say, no, you didn't. You're the plumber from downstairs. You have to say, oh, a Martian. Okay, well, you know. So whatever happens in the room, say yes to it. How can I use this at all points? You know, and the second thing that's great about improv is listen. When you're in an improv sketch, you have to listen to the other person. In bad improv, what you get is people who have the jokes running in their head who are waiting for the other person to stop talking so they can say a joke. You know, but it's, once again, being with clients. I don't want the BRC pitch in my head waiting for him to stop to say something. I really want to listen to what that person is saying. And besides the words, I want to listen to the emotional subtext. Is he afraid? Is he joyous? Is he, you know, worried? Is he happy? And the third thing that improv taught me is story. Here's a great improv sketch. You get 3 suggestions from the audience. It's an 8-minute sketch. It's got a beginning, middle, and end. Something happens, and at the end, there's something that's surprising and logical, as opposed to 8 minutes of people telling jokes at each other. And so, I use that. We're in a meeting. A meeting is a story, and we want a story to come out of the meeting. So I'm always thinking in the moment, okay, what's happening right now? Okay, I got the beginning of the meeting, we met each other, there's the text of the meeting, and now at the end, the third act of any attraction is being outside, seeing happy people come out. How do we cause that to happen? So it was invaluable training for that. It's about saying yes and being in the moment.
Excellent. Nina, how do you plan and approach designing a major attraction or land?
Well, what I do, I told you already that I do a lot of research, but then I'll sit there with my Cintiq and Photoshop and I'll start sketching. I'll sketch, even if it's bad, I'll start sketching things and I'll start grabbing my reference from the internet and throwing it on the top of the page. And pretty soon I've got something going. That's how I begin.
Okay. Joe, 2-part question for you. What's your favorite Disney project and why? And what is your favorite non-Disney project that you had nothing to do with and why?
Well, it's hard to say, but each project is like my child, I have 2 daughters, by the way, and Spaceship Earth was my first child, right, with Disney. I did the lighting inside and outside. And I loved that project. My last child was Pandora here on Disney property. And in between, I did a bunch of other stuff, notably Mysterious Island at Tokyo Disney Seas. Those are probably my 3 favorite Disney projects. And they were all different, and they were all challenging. And I thoroughly enjoyed being in those stories and in those places. Nothing that I like better in the world to do than to do the final laming on the lighting and programming and doing the details at the very end. To John's point, I'm involved in concept from the beginning. I see it all the way through to the end until the guests. And I enjoy being in the park, in the attraction, when the first guests walk through. I take great joy in seeing people reacting to what took years to produce. My non-Disney project, I love Harry Potter. Thank you very much to those people that are helping us do better stuff at Disney. Keep doing it. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Philipp, how have the projects you've worked on in other countries influenced or changed your approach to themed entertainment work, and where was the toughest place you've worked?
Well, my toughest job was, I think, in when we did the design and build for the Lotte World Parade in Korea. That was totally a lost in translation movie all over again. Funny thing was that we arrived there, put all the drawings on the board. The whole team came about and saw all those things, and we tried to explain it to them, and somehow they didn't get it. To our surprise, almost. Then we got into a modus where we said, okay, we could do this, we can do that, and we tried to explain little things, and by the end of the day, we thought we had a great day. Now, in Korea, you always have a middleman, and the middleman called me and said, well, how was your day today? I said, well, we had a great day, we had a great team, and we really worked together really well. And he said, well, the customer thinks a little bit different about that. So I said, okay. So he came over to the hotel room and said, yeah, you have to do it like this. He said, well, you were hired as a designer, as an expert, and they wanted European design. But, he said, so the Koreans think that we're there and you're there. But in the meantime, they say, well, we're the customer, so they go ahead of you. And then you have to say, no, I know better. And then that's a battle. And that was a battle all over. And once I got that, then we got the whole thing going. And that was, then it became fun. But we had discussions that they really saw it as a battle.
Yeah.
And I don't like things as a battle. I think we should have fun. And if I spend 2 years of my life doing a job, it better be fun.
Yeah.
Funny how there's sometimes a little pain before the fun occurs.
Yeah, exactly.
John, how has the industry changed throughout the course of your career, and where do you see it going?
Well, I'm going to pick up on Glenn's note, right? I mean, you really described it very well. We've now got much more rigor is what you were trying to describe. You know, when we started out, we were really a collection. You know, in the early 80s, when we ramped up for Epcot and TDL, it was really a collection of film, television, theater, some engineers, all kind of getting together trying to figure it out. Nobody had really done stuff like that at that scale twice in a row. I mean, they'd done one-offs, but we were doing Tokyo and Epcot at the same time, and that was a big challenge as we went through it. So what have we seen as we've grown through the industry? You know, it's what I just pulled out a second ago, the notes. I would say if we were sitting here having this conversation in the mid-'80s, we wouldn't have had a developer sitting in the room talking to us about it. I would say by the 90s, we probably wouldn't have had the ad that I saw and pointed out to you, Joe, with lawyers, right? That was run up on air, you know, during the break. So we're getting to a point where rigor is starting to come in place, which is a good thing, I think, which is a good thing, because that is really what the maturing of a business is. So we are in an industry, say that 6 times fast. We're an industry. And as an industry, where we're going is we have to continue to mature it. And we have to continue as an industry to do what we are doing today, right? To continue these work sessions, to cascade the knowledge, right? We're moving on, we've got to cascade the knowledge, right? So that's about what this process is about. And that we look to you as the next generation of really carrying that forward, continuing to mature, and continuing to grow that framework.
Well said. Ralph, you had a sound studio in your home that you built in Tennessee with your own hands, and you recorded hillbilly storytelling and folk music. Why?
I've always been fascinated with seeing things that other people don't see, and especially living in that part of Tennessee where I was seeing that a lot of these people that do these things, they were traditions, and they were dying, but they weren't passing the traditions on. So I had the feeling that for me personally, I wanted to document what I saw, but then later it occurred to me that I should share what I documented. And I'm continuing to do the same thing in Japan right now where I live. I'm doing documents on what they call living treasures, which are older people with a craft or an art that are not passing their crafts and arts on to other people. And I think that's important. I think even with what we're doing with our entertainment, we're doing something to pass on to the next generation so that they can remember something, the story, the entertainment, the happiness, whatever that is you're passing on. We don't want to get to the point where everybody lives in their cell phone all the time and they don't have joint experiences.
Well said. Glenn, what have you learned about the development of a new product and making it successful within the themed entertainment industry?
What I've learned about developing products is that it takes longer than you thought it was going to take, and it costs more than you thought it was going to cost. And then just because it's a really good product that everybody really likes doesn't mean they're going to buy it. So product development, you know, you asked earlier, why do we do both products and projects? The projects are up and down. We build a bunch of attractions and then we wait to build a bunch more, and in between you need things to tide you over. And so the products do that, and products have been good for us in that way, but they're difficult too.
Indeed. Rich, you've practiced your craft almost longer than anybody on the panel, with the exception of Ralph. What do you think the future holds for the industry?
I want to share something with everybody here, because we here have an amazing opportunity. As anybody that's read a newspaper today understands, we're in a period of almost unprecedented divisiveness in the country. And the amazing opportunity we have together is that we create, there's red places and then there's blue places. We work in purple places. People go to their little media niches to find what they want, but when they go to SeaWorld, when they go to Disneyland, when they go to one of our attractions, that's a purple place. They put aside all that, and we have an opportunity to address them and bring out their deeper humanity, which is the only hope to bring people together, to speak to their common emotions and have them experience things that cause them to love other people and know that they are loved and that they are heroic and they have these qualities we're trying to develop. So, anyway, seize that. Purple places, we're creating those. So it's a great opportunity.
Cool.
Excellent. Nina, when you're designing an initial concept for an attraction, you need to understand and create architectural elements, show systems, lighting, characters, and faithfully represent IP and so many other facets. At what point does concept illustration leave off and the art direction begin?
Well, concept illustrations is a sales tool. That's, you're making it look great, splashy, kids doing that. And you want to sell it because you want somebody to give you a lot of money to build it. When you actually get to the art direction part, you're already approved. You've got your funding, your finances, your team's intact, and you're going, oh no, now we got to build it. And that's where really the team gets together and all the disciplines.
Will John be on your team?
Of course. I'd be proud to be with anybody on this team.
All right, Joe, what additional skill or ability do you wish you had and why?
Well, in doing lighting, it's a very ephemeral thing. So I see what I want to accomplish in my head, and I have a clear vision of what I want to do. Oftentimes, it's very hard to communicate that. I wish I had developed my drawing skills better and my rendering skills better, or that somebody would come and develop a USB port to plug into my head so I could show the art director what it's going to look like.
Excellent, excellent. All right, we're running out of time here, but I have one last question that I'm going to ask all of you. It's the same question. So Nina, we'll start with you. What's the greatest piece of advice what's the greatest piece of advice you've ever received, from whom, and why does it resonate with you?
I'm going to say Bob Ross. Embrace the happy accidents because they happen on your projects. Not everything goes exactly the way you planned, and some of the things that you don't plan are the best things in the attraction or the show.
Excellent. Ralph, same question. What's your best piece of advice you've ever received, from whom, and why does it resonate?
Don't be afraid to try because you're liable to succeed.
Okay. Philip?
Well, you're going to make mistakes in life, so embrace them, learn from them, don't sweep them under the floor, and that's what experience is about.
All right. Rich?
Best piece of advice I ever got is from my friend, mentor, and most importantly, patron, Bob Rogers, who had an epiphany when he worked in the magic shop at Disneyland, and he realized it's not about selling trick to the guest, it's about teaching the guest to do the trick, so when the guest walks out, the guest can be the star of the next party. Make it about the guest, make the guest the hero. No matter what we do, It's about making the guest the hero.
You can applaud. Glenn, same question.
I can't tell you who told me this, but all of us that worked on the Epcot project will remember it because we were saying it to each other a lot. All problems are opportunities. And the corollary is that experience is what you get when you didn't get what you wanted.
You
know, there's an abundance of problems, and it's great if you can think about them as opportunities.
Wonderful. Joe?
I would have to pay tribute to Marty Sklar's blank sheet of paper, that don't fear a blank sheet. It's an opportunity. It's something that you can do anew, and be joyful in that blank sheet of paper.
Excellent. And John?
So, like Marty, mine is Orlando Ferrante. I hope some of you in the room know about Orlando. And when I went back to Disney the third time and was working on Shanghai as the project manager there for the park, I would go and have lunch with O periodically, and I would say to O, I'd say, well, here's the problem of the day, X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah. And O would start off with an answer, and he would go on and on and on. And eventually he always came back to the same theme at the very end, which he said, it's all about people, right? You get the right people in the room, and you will have an amazing project. And at the end of the day, it really is all about people.
Excellent. And with that, please give one more round of applause to our 2018 TEA Masters. Perfect.
That's great.
I'll follow you out.